How's your production on pasture? Are profits down? Are weight gains down? What are you going to do about it? Do something cost-effective. Do something that will make a difference. To add the first and proven leader in feed-through horn fly control to your cattle rations, ask for it by name, Alticid IGR.
Your land is more than a business. It's a heritage that has been passed down from those who tended it before you, by those who shaped it, changed it, and cared for it. Your land has a legacy, one that you carry on, but also one you build on. At Corteva Agriscience, we are the stewards of a lasting legacy. We have a responsibility to Dow AgroSciences, to maintain the relationships and trust they built, and to build upon those foundations, to help you care for your land, to provide innovations that help you protect the hard work and investment you've poured into it, to help you build a legacy that can be passed on for generations to come. Corteva Agriscience.
Ranching is passed down from generation to generation. Know what else gets passed down? The world's finest ranch and rodeo equipment, manufactured by WW Livestock Systems. Ranchers demand quality, and they have come to depend on WW equipment to fulfill their needs, large or small. We invite you to consider WW, made in America, available coast to coast. WW Livestock Systems, the world's finest since 1945.
Last but not least, we have our last session of the day. It's over wild bird feeding, choosing the right wild bird feed and feeder. Mr. Roger Richards will be joining us from D&D Commodities and Wild Bird Delight Seed. Mr. Rogers will discuss how to match up Pacific birds to the correct wild bird feeder and feed. He will address common problems in wild bird feeding, such as attracting the wrong birds, my bird feed ends up on the ground, squirrels eat all of my bird seed, and how to save money while buying Wild Delight here at Producers. Now we're going to turn it over to Mr. Richards so he can go over his presentation.
Terrific. Thank you all so much for having me. I want to welcome you guys to, of course, Producers Co-op. As she said, I'm Roger Richards with Wild Delight and from D&D Commodities. Can everyone see my screen? Hopefully that is a yes. Let's first start with a little bit about what we do and why we're a little different from some of the other bird feed. First of all, we're really big on trying to match up the bird to
your screen right now. It's not up yet.
Okay, so let me see what other. I'll try this again. We'll relaunch that. How's that?
There we go. That's perfect. Thank you.
Terrific. Okay, so anyway, as I was saying, we're really big on our company about trying to match up the right the bird to the right food and to the right feeder. That makes us a little different from the other companies that have bird food out there. Typically, they have cheaper ingredients, and a lot of people feed on the ground, or they'll feed in the wrong feeder maybe for the birds they're trying to get. And so we'll show you how to be a little more successful in trying to attract the right bird that you're looking for. First of all, let me talk about some of the resources that are available in the store. If you'll come by, you'll see the Wild Delight laminated chart. They're hanging already on inside the department. So if you're looking for blue jays, right there in the top left-hand corner, you'll see that their favorite thing to eat is peanuts. Well, obviously you don't want to buy the wrong food. You want to make sure that you're getting peanuts. They also like sunflowers and some other items. It'll show you exactly what they like, what type of feeder they like, and what food they don't like. In the Wild Delight pamphlet that's to your right, you'll find those in the stores. Those will also tell you about each one of our products that's in the stores, and it will tell you about the feeders as well. Okay, this is something else you'll find in the stores, is our kids' activity books. These are free, so take as many as you like. We have a lot of teachers that will take these. We have a lot of Boy Scouts, Girl Scout troops that will take these. They'll learn a little bit about the birds, and there's a lot of fun games and puzzles inside. One of the more important things is on the inside back page there, there's actually a $2 coupon. And these are in the store all the time. So this is a really good way on saving at least $2 every time you come into the store and buy your Wild Delight. Also, for a limited time, you'll see that we have those $5 coupons in the store. And so especially when you're buying a larger bag, this is a great way to save an extra $5. Another item that we do in the stores is our frequent buyer club. Basically, you buy 10 items, and you'll get one free of the same item. And all you have to do is you grab one of those envelopes that you'll find in the store and mail it to us. And all we need is the UPC label from the bag. We don't need any receipts, but if you'll mail that to us, and then we will send you back a coupon to get a free bag at your store. And there's some other resources that we have. You can go to our website at wilddelight.com, and you'll see resources for any type of educator, again, whether this is Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, public school, private school, or Sunday school. This is a list of free resources and materials that we will send to the educator to help present classes. It's a little more encompassing than wild bird. It's also a little bit about nature. But it can be as scientific or as casual as the teacher wants it to be. And of course, these are very grade specific materials, starting from kindergarten up through 12th grade. Another resource that you can tap into is Cornell Lab. This is from Cornell University Ornithology Department. And you can learn all about just about any kind of bird in the world from this place. They'll have live cams going on. It might be bald eagles nesting in one part of the country, and it may be ducks in another part of the country. But they also have a lot of courses that you can take. Some of them are ones that you would have to pay for, but they do have a lot of free classes, and most all of the seminars that you'll find on site are free too. One of the more important things that you'll see there is a free app that you can download to any type of phone, a smartphone, and you'll see the Merlin Bird ID. And with just a few questions, it will help you to identify a bird that you might not recognize. It starts with what part of the country are you in, and maybe some of the key characteristics of the bird. Is it in water? Does it have a black head, or does it have a white wing? And by the time you answered a few questions, it's going to be able to tell you exactly what that kind of bird is. And I have used this myself, and to help identify some migratory birds in our area just this week. When we talked about matching up the right the bird to the right food, to the right feeder, we're basically talking about the size of the bird. And there's more than 3 sizes, but for our purposes, we're going to talk mostly about small, medium, and large birds. When you get into the extra large birds, that's going to be mostly the crows and the grackles and birds like that. We kind of call those nuisance birds. And a lot of people will feed those, and typically you're going to feed them on the ground. It's hard for those birds to fit on most any feeder. If you get a really large platform feeder, they can fit on it. But for most of the feeders, those large birds, those extra large birds, can't fit on the feeder. Now that we know that, we can start targeting the type of birds that we want. So if you're looking to do the smallest of birds, like the little bitty finches, obviously because of the size of their body, they're going to have a smaller beak to eat, and they're going to take smaller bites out of the seeds. So they need smaller seeds. Maybe instead of eating an entire seed, perhaps they need just a simple chip from the seed. Also, the other two types that we see are hopper feeders. That's the one on the left with the cardinal. And simply that cardinal, that's what I would consider a medium-sized bird. For the most part, it can't fit on a tube feeder. The tube feeders have usually a round peg, and the cardinal's foot is not doesn't allow it to grip a round surface like that. It almost has to have a flat, wider surface that it could grip to. So a hopper feeder is perfect for the middle-sized birds, the cardinals. Then on the right there, you'll see the blue jay. The blue jay typically always uses a platform feeder. It can't fit on the tube feeders, and it typically can't fit on a hopper feeder. Platforms are ideal for that size bird. And here again, we were talking about those nuisance birds. You see, some of those birds are very large. They're not going to fit on any of these other feeders that we have. But we do see some other birds in the picture here that are smaller, and they might be able to fit on the bird, on the feeders. And so we're really careful about trying to match up, again, that bird to the feeder, and again, to the right food. Typically what happens when birds come up to a feeder and maybe a low quality of food is in there for them, it may be the food has a little bit of milo or sometimes millet, and then some sunflower seed. It's going to push the milo and millet off onto the ground. And that's why, even though you may not be putting any food out on the ground, the birds are going to come out, mess around in your feeders, and they're going to push the stuff they don't want out onto the ground. That's when you'll start getting those nuisance birds. The ones that stay on the feeder, they're going to continue to eat the things that they like, maybe like the black oil sunflower seed. Now, probably the best type of food that you can get from Wild Delight that feeds the largest majority of birds is going to be something like our nut and berry. This is a premium food. Most of the seeds in there are hulled. There are some black oil sunflower seeds in the shell, but this is good for the average bird. And again, so there's going to be some chips in there. So if you're a small finch, you're going to find some food in there that you want. If you're a cardinal, you're going to find food in there that you want. And certainly if you're a blue jay, you're going to find a lot of seeds in there that you want, including the black oil sunflower and safflower, as well as the peanuts. Now, the main difference between the nut and berry and the fruit and berry is now we've added another category of ingredients. There are a lot of birds out there that like to eat fruit, and there's some that prefer fruit over most anything else. And so this brings that new category of birds to your feeder. We also have cardinal food specifically. And the cardinal food, all of our Wild Delight products, first of all, have extra vitamins and minerals in there for the health of the bird. And that's really important because just like with people, the healthier you are, the better you're going to feel and the better that you look. And so when they eat our Wild Delight, the cardinal that's shown there, it's going to be healthier. It's going to look healthier. It's going to have brighter colors. And it's going to really, really like that cardinal food. Other birds will eat the cardinal food, but if you're trying to lure cardinals, if that's your favorite bird and you want cardinals to come to the feeder, this will be your best chance of attracting that bird. It has specifically what that bird's favorite foods are. And that does include safflower and sunflower and also raisins and cherries as well. Now, when we get over there to the bugs and berries, this is going to be something that's typically would attract a lot of other birds, including the bluebird. And the bluebird normally doesn't come to the feeders to eat very often. Typically, they like insects. And normally when the bird comes up to a feeder, there's not going to be any insects there. Well, we do put 3 types of insects in the bugs and berries, including mealworms. So it may take a couple weeks, but the bluebird, if they are in your area, they will find the feeder and they will start coming to it on a regular basis. And of course, we see the product on the right. That's going to be for woodpeckers. That's going to be for nuthatches and chickadees. Once again, there's going to be a wide variety of other birds that will attract. But if that is your 3 types of birds that you're looking to lure, that'll be your best chance on bringing those birds to the feeder. Also, when we are talking about finches, again, as I said, the bird is very small and their mouth is very tiny and their beak is just so small. It needs small seeds. They like the Niger seed. And they also prefer sunflower chips instead of a whole sunflower seed. We have the raw ingredients there, and a lot of people, I have several friends that like to make their own mixes. Maybe they'll take, some of our mealworms, and they may take some of the sunflower chips, and they're making their own custom mix, trying to get exactly the type of birds that they want. Well, the golden finch and the special finch are basically these foods that are already made. Now, I live up in the Dallas area, but I put several of these foods out in my area. The sunflower chips always do well, but I put out pure Niger, I put out golden finch, and I did put out the special finch. The finch sock there on the right, that's going to be items that, those are going to be items that already have the Niger preloaded into that box. And so you can just take out the sock that's in the box and hang it up. But anyway, I did a test on the special finch and golden finch and pure Niger. In my area in Dallas, about 90% of the birds prefer the special finch. The difference between the special finch and the golden finch is now we're adding more of the millet into the mix. But the special finch, besides the vitamins and minerals, is going to be a mix of the sunflower chips and the Niger. And one thing about seeds in general, and that's especially true when we're talking about finches, is you have to make sure that the seeds stay fresh. So it's better to fill it up more frequently than to leave it out and you fill it up maybe once every week or two. Once it kind of gets wet and starts sitting there, the birds get very, very picky about going to the feeder. They'll kind of slow down. And you don't want that. You want to make sure that the food is kind of fresh and dry. Okay, now we go into what we call our zero waste bird seed. These are some of our super premiums, but what that means is there's really no shells in the packages at all. You're buying 100% food. There's no waste to the product at all. And so this is really a perfect product if your feeders are on maybe your front porch, or you have a nice patio that you're feeding off of, or maybe you live in an apartment. Since there's no waste, there's not going to be anything, any shells or things dropping down on maybe the tenants that live below you. So this is an ideal product. Nothing is going to be pushed out of the feeder except by accident. And then if that happens, it's going to be eaten up very, very quickly. Again, this is, it doesn't get any better than these products. Now, there are a lot of birds that, because of the size again, you almost have to feed them on the ground. I have platform feeders, which are some of my favorite feeders to use. And I like feeding the blue jays. And just let me say about the blue jays, their favorite thing to eat again is the peanuts. And I like feeding peanuts in the shell. They will gobble up the peanuts out of the shell even faster, but if you give them the peanuts that are in the shell, they're going to stay longer, and you'll see them opening up the peanuts, and you get to engage them a little bit more. So it's more fun to watch that way. But anyway, there's a lot of doves and quails, as you see, they're even larger, that typically would feed on the ground. And dove and quail hunting is big in this area. There's a lot of people who raise those. And so we have a dove and quail food. Typically, it's like chicken food in the fact that it is a lower quality product. It's not going to have the better quality seeds. This is typically going to be milo and millet. And believe me, with my doves that I have in my area, they do prefer the better food. They do prefer the nut and berry and some of the other items like the woodpecker or the deck, porch, and patio. They'll eat that anytime. But because these birds are more like scavengers, they'll eat almost anything that you put in front of them. So again, if this is on the ground, sparrows and crows and grackles, those will all come and eat off the ground. So anytime you can limit feeding on the ground, that's ideal. Otherwise, you will attract more of the nuisance birds. I listed the gourmet food up there because that is a nice step up. It has about 10% millet, but it doesn't have any of the milo. So this is still going to be a nice step up, and the doves and quails will really like this, but you'll get a lot of other birds that will come that you will probably find desirable. And so now you just got to, just depending on how the feeder that you're looking for and what type of birds, we can isolate the exact bird that you want and make sure that it comes to you. Now we also want to talk about black oil sunflower, and there are a couple types of black oil sunflower. First of all, you have the plain, and then you also have striped. Used to, they would think that the striped black oil sunflower would have higher calories, and so therefore it was typically a bigger seed and it would be more nutritious. Now they're kind of finding out that it's really not that much difference between the black oil and the sunflower. It's more of a decorative seed. With our black oil sunflower, it is a larger seed to begin with. It's the higher quality, and then of course we wash all of our seeds 3 times, so it's a very clean product. But you want to try to avoid some other seeds when you start seeing that the shell is almost flat. That just means that the nut inside is not very big, and so the bird can do a lot of work to open up that seed, but they're not getting very much reward for their effort. So if you want to just mix your own, this is a great way to do it. If you want to feed just black oil sunflower, again, this is a great way to do it. I put this songbird food up there beside this because this is a really good compromise. Again, and it has a lot of the black oil sunflower, but you will find peanuts and cherries and some other very nice ingredients inside that package. And so it is going to draw a lot of other birds, including the cardinals there that you see. Now, probably squirrels are the most interesting thing that any bird feeder will talk about. And we're very passionate about that. You either love them or you hate them. If you love them, then there's a lot of things that you could do to make sure that they get fed so they don't eat all of your more expensive bird food that you're putting out for the cardinals. And so you'll see our crunching nut there. The crunching nut is really good for the squirrels. Also, it's going to feed the rabbits. It's also good for deer. There's something in there for a lot of wildlife. But again, this is a less expensive product than products like the deck, porch, and patio, which has no shells, and it has more expensive ingredients. You'll also see the peanuts there. The squirrels absolutely love the peanuts. And if you feed them peanuts in the shell instead of out of the shell, you'll find that the peanuts start showing up just about everywhere in your yard. They show up in all of my flower pots. So I'll look over on my patio and all of a sudden I see that I've got peanuts growing in my flower bed. Also, you'll see the corn there. The squirrels do like the corn. Other animals will eat that too. But if you love squirrels, these are three really good options on feeding the squirrels. And trying to feed squirrels away from the bird feeder, if you're trying to keep them out of the bird feeder, as long as they have a good source of food and they know where to get it, they'll have a tendency to leave your bird feeders alone. Now, if you hate squirrels, then we have a couple of options here. You'll see the Sizzle and Heat there, and that is another premium product, but it's actually sprayed with the habanero pepper juice. And so it is very, very hot. And it's not hot enough that it's going to hurt the squirrel, but it's usually hot enough that it will make the squirrels go to your neighbor's yard. And that's where we kind of want them if you hate them. Now, if a squirrel is very hungry, maybe it's in the middle of winter and there's no other food source, the squirrels will eat this. They just won't be very happy with you. They'll have a tendency to eat a lot less of this than they would if we put a premium out there like the nut and berry or the deck porch and patio. Also on the right side there, you'll see safflower. Most of the time, squirrels do not like to eat safflower. And so the more that you mix this into your other foods, you'll find that the squirrels will tend to leave that food alone as long as there is another source that they can eat someplace else. Another option that you have if you really don't want squirrels in your yard is making sure that you do choose the right feeder. On the left, you see a hopper feeder and it's activated by the lever. And so when something that weighs very light comes along there, like the birds, everything's fine. They can eat from the bird feeder there without any problem. But if a squirrel comes along and he reaches over from a tree branch and he tries to put his weight onto that feeder, the feeder will close. And then he won't have access to that food. The same thing is true of the feeder on the right-hand side. The feeder will the weight of the squirrel will make the feeder drop down and it closes the ports and the squirrel can't get it. Now, for you that have been feeding birds for a while, you'll see that squirrels usually figure out a way to get around these things. I have learned to try to just feed the squirrels a little bit and make it as difficult as I can on some feeders and give them some options on the others. For me, that works, but there are options for whether or not you love the squirrels or hate them. Now, we have a lot of different types of questions, and I won't go through all of these, but when should you feed the birds? Basically, you do want to feed the birds year-round. Birds, just like people, we're hungry year-round. During the summer months, you're busy doing a lot, burning a lot of energy and building nests, and so you do need extra food. In the wintertime, there's not as many natural food sources. I think they said that we've lost about two-thirds of our wildlife since the 70s. So especially for those of us who live in the cities and there's not as many forests in our areas any longer, this is a really good way to help supplement their diet and make sure that they can survive and be healthy. Obviously, the more healthy they are, they're going to lay more eggs that are likely to hatch, and those babies will be able to grow up. Now, how much do the birds eat? It does depend, and it's mostly depends on the size of the bird. But once again, it's a lot better trying to fill up the feeders a little more frequently than it is to let the food stay in the feeder and it get old or get wet. Niger is especially true. Once that gets stale, the birds will stop eating the Niger seed. Should I provide a constant food source? And typically that means you should. If the birds or if you're moving the feeder around all over the yard, the birds may have a hard time finding it. If it's always in the same place, then they'll find it very easily and they'll know where to come. Birds also need to make sure that they feel safe. So having your feeder close to bushes and other trees, you'll get a lot better results than if you have your feeder in the middle of the yard. Also, if you have a water source for the birds, they're more likely to come back to the feeder. Just like with us, you would never think of going to a restaurant that didn't serve you something to drink along with your food. The birds say the same thing. They need the food and they need the water. When you do put out a new feeder, typically it could take 1 hour or to 4 weeks, as you see there, depending on the type of bird that you want to attract. Obviously, birds like cardinals and the blue jays are more common in our area. If you're looking for a bluebird, it may take it a few weeks before it finds it. And even though it knows that most of the time there's not going to be anything in that feeder that it likes, they are naturally curious. So if they see other birds going from the trees to the feeder, from the trees to the feeder, from the trees to the feeder, it will eventually go and investigate and see if there's anything it likes there. And if you have the bugs and berries, it knows it can come back. Now, there's a lot of problems as to why birds don't come to the feeders. Again, you got to make sure it's in a special place. In my area, I have a lot of hawks or eagles, not eagles. It is hawks, I'm sorry. And so the birds are cautious about that. One thing about the blue jays in particular, we kind of call the blue jays the policemen of the bird world. You'll start listening for their calls, and they'll start announcing, hey, there's some, a hawk over here, there's a cat over here, there's some danger. And all the other birds know to start listening for the special calls that the blue jay makes. So that's really important, to start listening to the calls that the various birds make. Okay, again, if the birds are not eating, there's a lot of different things that could happen. Maybe the oil content in the sunflower seeds is not sufficient enough. Maybe the food is too old, or it has gotten wet, or it has gotten moldy. The birds don't like that. Again, when we talk about seeing all of the seeds on the ground, what that tells you is there's a lesser quality mixes. Most of the birds, just like us, you want a better quality food. If you're having to eat junk food all the time, that might do if you're really hungry, but if you had to do that every meal, you're going to get tired of that very quickly. So having a nice diverse diet that's high quality, that's good for the birds, is going to be the best way to get them. They'll keep the food in the feeder, and the other birds won't have access to it. Sorry about that. And then of course the plants under your feeder. If you're having seeds germinate, then you're probably using a cheaper food as well. You have food options like the zero waste and the deck, porch, and patio. As we said, those are going to be hold. There's no shells, and so they will never germinate. Most of the seeds that we use will not ever germinate. And so that's why we have some issues with, if you ever have an issue with these products, you got to look at what's in there, what's causing these things to age or not be a good choice for the birds. There's usually a reason that the birds are not coming to your feeder. As we mentioned earlier, you want to make sure that you do have clean water. And I change my water out every day or two. I have a small water bowls for the birds. And when I try to fill up my platform feeders almost every single day, and then I bring some water out there for them. It also helps in the wintertime, so I don't have a lot of water that stays frozen in the Dallas area. And then, do you need trees, shrubs, and flowers? Absolutely you do. The more cover that a bird has, it's going to feel more protected. And then we talked about, what types of birds that you want to get. When you're getting something like the nut and berry, again, that's our #1 seller. And so it's going to have probably the widest variety of birds that's going to attract. But beyond that, again, if you're looking for those bluebirds specifically, that's going to require something like the bugs and berries. Then why do birds come to the feeder? And they'll eat something and then they'll fly away, and then a little bit later they'll come back again. We found that the birds have very distinctive personalities. Again, the blue jays are some of my favorite birds to feed. And I have blue jays that will stay at the feeder and eat. I have blue jays that will come grab a peanut and then go. And I have blue jays that will come and pick up every single peanut before he decides. And his brothers and sisters will come 5 times and fly away and eat their peanut and come back before he's made up his first mind, his first choice to eat. How do you stop blackbirds from taking over the feeders? It is literally choosing the right feeder for the bird. And that is the biggest mistake that people make and getting the wrong one. As I mentioned earlier, a blackbird typically can't fit on most of the feeders. Typically, the only feeder they can fit on is going to be like the larger platform feeders. with my platform feeder is small enough, and then with the wires that it hangs from, I've seen blackbirds try to access it, but there's not a clear spot they feel comfortable in landing. Then why do you see only sparrows? Again, it's the cheaper ingredient. There's some birds that do like millet. Sparrows is one of them. But most of our Wild Delight does not contain milo at all, and very few of them contain millet. But there are finches that like millet. There are sparrows that like millet. There's a few others. Definitely the doves and quails like that too. How do you keep squirrels off your feeder? We've kind of already talked about that. You either have a couple of choices of using a product that has a pepper juice sprayed onto the feed, or you get squirrel resistant feeders for that. What's the best way to clean your feeders? I may do this maybe once every month or two, depending on the feeder. Feeders that have the smaller things like the sunflower chips or Niger, that's going to require being cleaned more often. My platform feeder requires very, very little cleaning. And then on the goldfinches, a lot of the finches in our area are here temporarily. They migrate through. I have a few that will stay year round, but most of them will fly in and out of the area. Down in Bryan, Texas area, you guys have your own unique birds that will stay year round there, but you're on the migratory trails for a lot of unique birds too. And what can I do about the hawks killing my birds? I've lost several birds myself because of the hawks. And as you see, they typically look for the weaker birds. If it's a healthy bird, one that can fly and navigate right quickly into the smaller branches, it can get away. So really the best way to prevent that is to have some brush close by. Again, we're talking more of the bushes or denser trees and places where a hawk could not freely fly. When we talk about suet is a great option in the summer. It's high energy for the birds. But most of the times you're not going to have a problem with suet turning bad because it's going to be the no melt type. There's ways to cope with that. And most of the suet is already handled that way now. So that's really an old problem that we don't have too much. If you're making you're on suet and you may be doing something like a peanut butter based suet, it could be an issue for you. And then of course, so every once in a while we'll get asked about why don't birds' feet stick to metal perches? And simply the answer is they don't have sweat glands. They don't feel the cold and the moisture like we do. Also, when we're talking about this, let me just back up a little bit about the sizzle and heat and why that works. It has a hot pepper juice sprayed on it, and the active ingredient to that reacts to your saliva glands. And so any mammal that's going to eat the sizzle and heat, like if we ate it, if a squirrel ate it, if a mouse ate it, it would be very, very hot to us. But birds simply don't have saliva glands. So that never gets activated and they don't taste the heat. They can't feel the heat. And so it's really good about, of course, keeping the squirrels away, and the birds don't even sense that it's there. Some people used to think that it's because birds like spicy, and it's the complete opposite. They can't even taste it. Birds do have taste buds. They know what they like and what they don't like, but they don't have anything that's going to activate the hotness and the sizzle and heat. Okay, what tools are available for me to identify birds? The best one I talked about is through Cornell Labs Ornithology Department. It's that Merlin Bird ID. It is a free app, and certainly download it. And you'll find it again listed on the website in my presentation if you're able to flip back to that, and you'll find that address. But you can look up Cornell University and Cornell Lab. Also on Facebook, you'll find a lot of other folks you can connect with. You'll be back in touch with us. We're on Facebook too. And certainly we like hearing from you. If you guys have any questions or problems or issues, we want to hear about it. And that pretty much concludes our training class. If you guys have any questions or problems, just let your store management know. And if they'll contact me, we'll make sure that you get the right answer. And if it's something that I don't know, we'll check in with some of our experts, or even go to Cornell and ask them ourselves. But anyway, I appreciate your time and attention, and thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Richards, for your wonderful presentation about birds. It was certainly very informative, and we greatly enjoyed it here. Don't forget, today, Producers is open till 7:30 with some great feed deals. Please come see us here at the store. We're open until 7:30 today, like I said. And join us tomorrow morning for our next session. It's 8 a.m. It'll be electric fence